Hello, I'm Ollie and this is Criminally, where I talk about crime, pulp, horror, that kind of thing. Today, westerns and disturbing books. It's my weekly wrap-up. So this has been the first week of June on the Range, the fantastic Western-themed reading event created by the great Michael K. Vaughan. So I have a few Westerns to talk to you about today, 4 Westerns and a couple of other things as well. So I've started reading some disturbing books again, so I've got 2 of those to talk about. So yeah, a few things to go through today, and I'm now at 74 books in my Read What You Own challenge, where I'm reading 100 books I already own before buying a new one, so nearly 3/4 of the way there. The finish line is definitely in sight, and I'm looking forward to getting to it. It's definitely feeling like more of a slog this time round. So as usual in this weekly video, I'll talk about what I've been reading, what I'm reading at the moment, what I think I might be reading next, and also talk about what's been on the channel and what's coming up on the channel. Before I do that though, 3 weeks ago, I think it was in this video, or maybe it was 4, I talked about the fact I've been watching Doctor Who, and how much I'd enjoyed the start of the new series of Doctor Who, and then got behind with watching them. A few people in the comments had asked me to keep updating on my Doctor Who experience in these videos, so I'll very quickly talk about the next 2 episodes, which I have now watched. I haven't watched last week's yet, and clearly I haven't watched this week's yet because it hasn't been on yet, but I watched episodes 3 and 4. So episode 3 was Boom, I think, which was the kind of future war one where Doctor Who has trodden on a landmine, and the episode kind of revolves around that. I thought that was a fantastic episode. I thought it was a really good kind of had a nice kind of hard sci-fi vibe to it, but also mixed in kind of a bit of political commentary and things like that. It was tense, it was funny. I just thought it was a really, really good episode. And then after that, episode 4 was, I think, 73 Yards, which was kind of a weird time travelling episode, which I thought had some great moments. I thought there were some really, really funny bits in it, and it was definitely intriguing and gripping throughout. I thought as a whole, it felt like it tried to do a bit too much, and that there's a really long, it takes place over a really long period of time. That episode is the only way to describe it, and I wasn't sure that really worked in something that was only like 45 minutes long. So I thought it was good, but I didn't think it was great. But looking forward to watching last week's episode, which people seem to have really liked, and I'm not sure what this week's episode is going to be, so we'll try and catch up on those and report back again next week. Anyway, assuming I haven't lost everyone who isn't a Doctor Who fan, let me talk about what I've been reading. So as I said, it's June on the Range, so I've mostly been reading Westerns this week. So I've got 4 of those to talk about. So the first of those was one I didn't even have on my TBR to read, but somebody had mentioned it in the comments. And I had it on my Kindle, so I thought I'd read it. And it's by an author I like. So the book is Appaloosa, by an author called Robert B. Parker, who's best known for creating the detective character Spencer. I've read a couple of the Spencer novels and really enjoyed those. So this is the first in a series of about 10 Western novels he's written about these 2 characters, one of whom is a kind of a marshal, and the other of whom, the other character is the narrator of these books, is like his sidekick, and they basically travel around the Old West, getting hired by towns where there is trouble going on and sorting out that trouble, so bringing a bit of law to lawless towns, basically. I thought this was really fun. It was just a really solid Western. It wasn't like amazing, but it was really enjoyable throughout, and it reminded me a lot of Lonesome Dove, actually, by Larry McMurtry, in terms of like some of the themes of friendship in particular. So I thought that side of it worked well, and it felt like a kind of shrunk down version of Lonesome Dove. There's also a strong theme in this book about like the relationships between men and women, and that kind of that dynamic of the relationship between the sexes in Western times in particular, with women being a bit more kind of worldly wise and knowing, shall we say, the female characters, and the men, even kind of the heroes who are great gunslingers and things like that, being a bit clueless when it comes to romance and sex. So that side of it I enjoyed, and that definitely felt like something that McMurtry had covered in Lonesome Dove as well. So yeah, Appaloosa, definitely enjoyable. We'll definitely read more in that series. I think I've got the second one on my Kindle. After that, then, a non-Western, so I read volume 3 of Saga by Brian K. Vaughan and Fiona Staples. So a long-running comic book series, which is fantastic. So I read the first 2 volumes of it last month. Really enjoyed those. I've got a fair few of them that I got in a deal a while ago digitally. So a kind of sci-fi fantasy type story about this couple who are from opposite sides of a war and are being kind of chased across the galaxy by people who don't like the fact that they have a romantic relationship, and they have a child as well, and the story is told from the perspective of the child. So just really gripping, fun science fiction, bit of humour, bit of sex, lots of action. I'm really thoroughly enjoying that series. After that then, another Western. This one sent to me by a viewer who is also the author. So this is Vulture Wings by Dirk Hawkman. This was just a solidly enjoyable Western. So like Appaloosa, doesn't necessarily try to do anything particularly new or inventive, but was just solidly enjoyable. So this is about 2 teenage brothers who get kidnapped by a vicious gang basically, and it's about their dad who was kind of a soldier or something like that previously. So he's now kind of a normal guy, working in a Western town, but has a history of violence. About him trying to get them back from this gang, and it was gripping, it was entertaining. I enjoyed it a lot. It was a fun, diverting read. I've got a couple of other Dirk Hawkman books, which I'm looking forward to reading soon. Next up then, so Michael K. Vaughan's 2 rules for Junior on the Range, if there are rules at all, and there aren't really beyond read a Western, but his kind of 2 guiding principles are try and read a book by Zane Grey and try and read a book by Louis L'Amour. So the Zane Grey book I read was The Border Legion, so I will show again this wonderful first edition of that. It was very kindly sent to me by Heidi, one of my viewers a while ago. I read it digitally. I didn't want to risk this lovely old edition falling apart. I enjoyed this a lot, and in common with the other Zane Grey books I've read, I ended up enjoying it more than I was while I was reading it. So I find Zane Grey's writing and his language feels really, really dated, and is quite unusual. Just the way he structures sentences feels a bit unusual to me. And this story felt like it was kind of dragging. It felt like it didn't really have too much of a plot. But in the end, when it got to the climax, I found I was really invested in what was going on, and I ended up really enjoying it. So it's about this woman who leaves the town she lives in to go kind of into kind of outlaw territory, following this guy she knows in the town who kind of wants a romantic relationship with her, and she kind of doesn't. But she's intrigued by him, and she ends up following him. She falls in with some nasty outlaws, and there ends up being this kind of love triangle where there's her and there's these 2 guys, one of whom is definitely nasty and one of whom may be nasty. And it's about her, trying to decide which of the men she wants to be with. And it's full of kind of melodrama and, a fair bit of action. The thing that really impressed me about it, or really struck me about it, was it just has a feeling of reality to it. It feels like a book that was written by someone who knows what it was what it was like to exist in that kind of Western landscape. So I don't know. I've not researched Zane Grey. I don't know how much he really knew about that. But given that this was written in 1916, so the Wild West was coming to its end around then. But there were still elements of it, definitely. Still elements of the frontier. So it's interesting reading a book, that was contemporary to the Wild West. And as I say, it felt like it convinced me in terms of its depiction of, people living outside of society, in the desert, kind of fending for themselves. So yeah, an interesting read. After that, then I read a Louis L'Amour book, which I didn't enjoy as much. So this one, conversely to The Border Legion, I started out thinking I was going to really enjoy this and ended up not enjoying it that much. So this is High Lonesome, as you can see. So this is about a guy who's part of kind of a gang who rob banks. and about him falling for the daughter of like an ex-associate of his, basically. So it had, a decent amount of action. I enjoyed at the start the kind of bank robbery scenes where they're like blowing up safes and things like that. So I enjoyed that side of it, but I found I was less and less engaged by it as the book went on, which I think has been my experience with Louis L'Amour previously. So I think I'm definitely more Team Zane Grey than I am Team Louis L'Amour, if indeed there are teams. So yes, finished that one as well. Then after that, I found, having read four westerns already this week, I definitely needed something that wasn't a western. So this I've had on my shelf for a while. I got sent a copy of it by a publicist towards the end of last year, and I think it came out in the States towards the end of last year, but hasn't been published in the UK yet. It comes out in paperback in the UK in July, I think, and I think it's released in the States in July as well. So this is Deliver Me by Elle Nash. So Elle Nash, an author I hadn't heard of before, but she's written a few different things and seems to be, seems to definitely have a fan base, shall we say, in the horror community. I'm not sure I loved this. So it's an interesting book, and it's definitely very readable, and it definitely kept me turning the pages. But it felt like the end didn't, whilst it kind of fitted the rest of the book, I'm not sure it worked. I was impressed by the end. I liked the end, but it felt like it was a bit disjointed from the rest of the book, if that makes sense. So it's kind of I would kind of label it a modern Southern Gothic. So it's about this young woman called Dee Dee, who's in a relationship with a horrible guy who's obsessed with like insects and things like that. And she desperately wants to become pregnant and keeps on miscarrying. And it's about their relationship. It's also about her relationship with a friend of hers, so a friend of hers from when she was a teenager, who's come back into town again, and they kind of had a relationship in the past. And it's hard to say too much more about it than that, other than things get increasingly weird as the book progresses, and ends up being very, very weird. I only finished it yesterday. I still feel like I haven't quite processed it, so I probably am going to do a review video of this one at some point, but I need to gather my thoughts on it a bit more before I can do that. So that's what I have read this week. In terms of currently reading, so I'm currently reading a book that loads of people have talked about, and I've had a copy of for a while, but just hadn't got around to. That's My Dark Vanessa by Kate Elizabeth Russell. So far, and I'm about a third of the way through it now, I'm really, really impressed with it. I think it's a pretty great book, to be honest with you. So it's a book about an abusive relationship between a teenage schoolgirl and her teacher, but it's told from her perspective, and it's told with her looking back on the events that happened after an allegation has been made against him by another girl, which has kind of gone viral. It's a really interesting book. I think the way Kate Elizabeth Russell has kind of structured it, and the perspective of this woman looking back on what happened to her is really, really interesting. So yeah, enjoying that a lot. I'm expecting it to be like a 4 or 5 star read based on what I've read of it so far. So we'll see how I get on with it as I continue reading it, but I'll probably do a review of that one on the channel at some point as well. And after that, I think I'll be continuing my read-through of all of Patricia Highsmith's books. The next book in that series is People Who Knock on the Door, which I know nothing about at all. So I'm looking forward to giving that a try, hopefully later this weekend. So that is what I've been reading. In terms of channel stuff then, so in the last week, you've had my review of the very strange 70s horror novel Eat Them Alive by Pierce Nace. You've had my May wrap-up video where I talk about everything I've read in May. You've had a video where I talk about 10 classics that I really enjoyed, 10 classics I don't consider to be boring. And also I did a video about Stephen King and about how King has has managed to be successful for so long. So, his career now has spanned 6 decades, which is kind of incredible. So a video about that. In the week ahead then, I'm going to do a video where I talk about long books, so that the pleasures and pitfalls of reading long books. I'm going to do another video on a similar theme, so I'm going to do a series of videos I think about long books. I'm going to do a video talking about the 10 longest books that I've read. I'm going to do an update on my attempt to give up using my Kindle and the Kindle ecosystem. So this week, or this last couple of weeks, there have been a few obstacles that have kind of cropped up, so things I've had to overcome. So I'm going to talk about that. And then I'm hoping to take delivery this week of a new e-reading device, which has literally just been launched. So I think it was launched yesterday. So yeah, that's coming in the post hopefully. So I'm hoping to do an unboxing video of that as well. So yeah, that's what you can look forward to seeing in the channel in the week ahead. Anyway, I'll leave it there. Hope you've all had fantastic reading weeks. Do let me know what you've been reading in the comments. And as always, thank you very much for watching. Hope you're safe and well out there. Hope you're reading good stuff. And I'll speak to you again very soon. Cheerio.